Hey guys, and today we have another week of grosses, so let's get into it. Up first, as always, we have Anne Juliet. Anne Juliet went from 96% last week to 99% this week, and 1,212,768 to this week's 1,137,472. It had a $75,000 decrease from last week, but again, I think these numbers are still perfectly fine, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. A Beautiful Noise announced they were closing in June, and that seems pretty weird because they're not selling well. I would have just closed it like in the next 2 months, but I guess they want to get that, summer money. But last week it did 64%, and this week it did 67%. But the overall gross went from 748,000 last week to this week's 709,000. So very interesting. Back to the Future went from 99.99 to 96.92, and 1,325,148 to 1,090,800 this week. So again, it's making over its weekly gross or weekly average that needs to be making, so it's doing fine. Days of Wine and Roses continues to not do so hot, but the capacity went up slightly to 60% compared to last week's 54%. Last week it did 413K, and this week 406K. So again, I don't think this will extend beyond April, because clearly it's not selling super hot. And again, I understand it. If you go and see the show, you realize why it's not selling well. But I wish that people were willing to become uncomfortable and see something that's going to make them feel, and I get why they don't. And it is a very intense musical to witness, but it's worth it. Hadestown continues to do amazing with 101.28% capacity this week compared to last week's 100.82, and 1,036,690 to last week's 1,042,079. Now, I don't know if this is because of the new Eurydice and Persephone. I think it's because of the new Eurydice just started a little bit ago. But clearly, Hadestown is having a bit of a renaissance because of the stunt casting, and I'm very happy about that. I want Hadestown to last, and be here 5 years from now. I don't want to see it close. So, if they continue to maintain this for a few months, it'll be safe and it won't close this year or next year. So, Hadestown, just when you think it's down, it comes back. Hamilton made $1 million, like always, going from 1,961,250 last week to this week's 1,876,354. Kimberly Akimbo, which is closing in April, did 90% capacity this week compared to last week's 93%, and 509K compared to last week's 603K. Merrily had one of its weakest weeks yet, and by weakest I mean it's still making half of $2 million. Going from 1,613,481 to 1,566,346, selling out. Moulin Rouge did 99% last week and this week, going from 1,494,944 last week to this week's 1,350,210. Six made $1 million compared to last week's 986K, going from 99.26 to 99.58. Spamalot did 71% compared to last week's 87%, going from 929K to 693K for a 200K plus drop. Not a good week for Spamalot. Clearly, it is suffering in the kind of January, February months. A lot more inconsistent grosses. In the beginning, it was doing pretty good. It made $1 million. It's not in any financial trouble. It's not going to close before the Tonys or before its supposed closing in July. But I can see why they might not extend it. Purely because I feel like Spamalot doesn't do well in the January, February, fall, September, October months. But, so poorly that, it's not worth it. But it's, it's fine. I mean, this was not a good week. Not a good week. If Spamalot has a 6 in front of it, it's not doing good. Really bad. or the alarm bells start going, you know, but not enough where it's like it's gonna close. Sweeney did 1,424,356 compared to last week's 1,479,716, going from 91% to 98%. The Notebook did 99% this week compared to selling out last week, and 1,013,563 last week compared to this week's 880,360. Still a solid week. Still a solid week. Still doing amazing numbers. Still making bank at the box office. It's not in any major trouble. But it is interesting that it had a 100K plus drop. Which is what you don't really want to see after, you know, a first really good week. And Water for Elephants did 344,493 and 93.88% capacity. Water for Elephants is, I think, going to be the New York of this season. I think it's going to flop. Early preview audiences have said this is not a good show, or that it's very minimal set and it's very got a poor score and book. I'm not going to see it. I don't think you should see it. But if you want to, go and see it. But it has like a $40 cast. $40 cast. It's 40 people in the cast, I think. And I think its weekly average is, I don't know, I'll put the Broadway Journal screenshot in there. It's either somewhere between $900,000 and $1 million. So this musical can't really do, like, the more smaller numbers that most shows can. And I know it only had two performances, but if I were a producer, I would want a 4, I would want a 5, I would realistically want a 6. But it's not a decent start. What am I saying? It's not a good start. But if it can go from 344,000 to like 700,000, 800,000, that'll bode a lot better for Water for Elephants. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.